and you are from Crimean descent of
Karaites. Okay, so
Karaites.
basically...
And so tell me the history of your stream of Karaites.
My family's actually from Poland and Lithuania, but before like a lot of years they were from Crimea. So as I was just explaining to you before you decided to film me about the whole migration, so basically there was a schism that led to the whole creation of like the Karaite movement.
In Iraq, in Babylon.
Babylon, and there's a lot of people in Persia.
So like 2,500 years ago?
Not that long ago, more like 1,300. It was after Islam.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So they're already looking like to see who's going to be in charge of like the head of the exile. Resh Galuth, I think it's called in Arabic.
Okay.
Not Aramaic, not Arabic. Anyway, so what happened was there was this schism, and these groups of people came together and had this idea of Karaite. And a guy, Daniel Al-Kumisi from Iran, who I think studied in Iraq, spent a lot of time in Iraq in the academies of Babel. He basically got a group of people. Came together, they moved to Jerusalem, they call themselves the Mourners of Zion, and they're basically what we could say the first Zionists.
So that was in the 10th century?
Around the 10th century, yes. And they were very strict, they didn't eat any meat and didn't drink any wine. It was just a very strict interpretation of the religion because they were mourning for Zion, they were mourning for the fact that the temple had been destroyed, and they...
and that was a way of life, not like just on a certain period of the year.
No, it was definitely... very much a way of life. Like this was how they lived. They said we are not permitted to enjoy much until we can build the temple back. They were saying the rabbis were too concerned with like continuing in the diaspora or enjoying XYZ, but they said no, we can do nothing but mourn and try our best to rebuild until we have the temple back. And so what happened is they were flourishing in Jerusalem. They had their own like quarter. It's called the Karaite quarter, separate from the rabbinical Jewish quarter, in the old city. Right outside, I'm not sure exactly. And what happened was they were eventually they were growing in the land of Israel, and they had a big center of the community in Ramle as well, with some other places. But unfortunately, the Crusades happened, and it was about 1300s, right? And so that basically just destroyed Jewish life for the most part in the land of Israel, especially Karaite life being a small minority of Jews. And so what happened was Karaite life switched to places like Damascus, Cairo, and Istanbul. And so most Karaites we meet today are of Egyptian descent, and their family's been consistently in Cairo. Some of them have ancestry in Damascus and other places, but like consistently it's been the community in Egypt, from what I know at least. I'm not of Egyptian descent, I don't kind of speak for that community, but it's what...
So how did your community split off?
Okay, so that's the next part. So from Istanbul, they assimilated a bit into Greek culture. They spoke a language I think called Karaitica, which was a dialect of Greek, and it was, you could call it modern Greek. It wasn't by any means ancient Greek, but it was like not exactly how Greeks would speak today. And it was like, you know, Ashkenazim have Yiddish, Sephardim have Ladino, Karaites of Istanbul had Karaitica, and I think a few still speak it today, very few though. I'll have to visit Turkey and find that out. Anyway, so what happened was we've seen some records over the years. We don't really have like any reason why this happened, but we've seen some records that some people were moving out from Istanbul to Crimea, just crossing the Black Sea, going north, and built a settlement there, and it started getting quite big. And there's a place you can go there now called Chufut Kale. I believe that's how it's pronounced. In Tatar language, this means Jewish fortress. Chufut, I think, meaning Jew, and Kale meaning fortress. And it's supposed to be a derogatory term. However, it's just the name of the place now. People aren't so concerned about that. And so what happened was in Chufut Kale and some other places such as like Simferopol and Yevpatoria, I believe, Theodosia, they had centers of Karaite learning. And eventually the Crimean Karaites became like the leaders. It became the Yerushalayim was the center of Karaite learning, Karaite knowledge, Karaite culture. Crimea became a center. Egypt and Crimea had some differences and stuff. Like, for example, there was some idea where Egyptian Karaites would not eat Crimean Karaite slaughtered meat because Egyptian Karaites at the time believed that something called compensation, which means that I don't know how to explain it, like, believe that God allows us to kill animals to eat, but because he allows us to kill animals, it's an innocent life, so like the animal is blessed when it's killed and it's compensated in heaven for whatever. It's not really clear. I don't think anyone really believes this anymore. In fact, I think Hasidic Jews believe the opposite of it, but we're talking about Karaites, not Hasidim, so whatever. But the Egyptians believe in this idea of compensation, and therefore they believe that the Crimean Karaite, who did not believe in compensation when they slaughtered animals, is therefore not kosher, because the slaughterer doesn't believe in compensation. They thought, how could we do something so horrible like eat meat from someone who doesn't believe the soul of the animal is being saved? So there's a bit of a divide there. We don't usually have things like Ashkenazim and Sephardim where it's like one thing or the other thing. However, there's little like regional differences here and there. It naturally takes place over time. Like religions, languages, cultures all separate. And so what continued to happen was in Crimea the civilization grew. It became very good place to live as a Karaite. And a lot of them would go down to Jerusalem and tend to the synagogue here and things like that, and come back and study. And eventually started kind of like integrating into the local Tatar culture. Apparently there's quite a bit of intermarriage. I have no clue about that, but that's what I've heard. And the Karaites in Crimea end up speaking language, a dialect of Tatar, they're referred to as Karaim.
Do you know how many there are?
Today? Maybe 1,000, I don't know. Most are quite assimilated into whether it's just mainstream Judaism or like into Russian culture or things like that.
Okay.
So what happened was in Crimea, it was subject to like a lot of raids and a lot of fighting and just a lot of all sorts of stuff like that. And about 300 years ago from now, I believe, not fully sure, but around 300 years ago, some Lithuanian king came down and kidnapped a lot of Tatars, and with them a lot of Karaites, and brought the Karaites to Lithuania, to the city of Trakai. Trakai is a place, I haven't been there yet, I'd love to go. It has a beautiful castle, and the story is that the Karaites were always guarding the castle and always keeping it safe, and were the royal soldiers of the king. Now, I've heard that that's a complete myth and a fabrication, but I don't know. So what happened is many Karaites were moved to Lithuania and to Trakai, and they built a strong community there, which was, by that point, the Karaites had kind of diverged so much from rabbinical Jews that there was really not much contact whatsoever. And so then what happened was from Lithuania it spread outwards, and so now you get Karaites in northeastern Poland, and in fact that's where my ancestry comes from, right there, the Polish area. But an unfortunate thing that happened was over the last 200 years, during the times of the Russian Empire being very, very, very anti-Semitic, as we all know, a lot of the Karaites said, well, what's the point of all of this? We're like a minority, we're not connected with the rabbinical community, so why not just pretend we're not Jewish? And that's exactly what they did. The problem is they let it get to their head, and now the community in Lithuania thinks they're completely non-Jewish. They say, no, we're not Jews, we're our own separate thing. They even call their organization a church. Don't know. But after all these years, of like just dealing with Russian rulers, Soviet rulers, Nazi rulers against Soviet rulers, and now these new nation states are being like consolidated in Eastern Europe. It's been a balagan, as we say. It's all been kind of mixed up a bit, and I don't know exactly what the future is, but like now, essentially, we have this just weird, random, just like pockets of people. So like in Lithuania, I think we have around 300 people, don't identify as Jews, just as Karaite, and almost none of them are religious, and most of them don't understand the traditions beyond basic like ethnic identity type stuff. You got like 50 people in Poland, quite similar. I think on Yom Kippur, something they like gather in someone's house. Crimea, I don't know so much about it. It's not something I've looked into as much. I have a friend who's from Crimea. Him and his whole family, they made Aliyah, moved to Israel from Crimea, and are active in the Karaite community here. In the Karaite community, we also have someone named Avram Kafeli. He's a brilliant musician, and he's also like a leader in the community. He's from Crimea himself. Other than that, I don't know so much about the Crimean situation. I was in Kiev in Ukraine, which is nowhere near Crimea, but there was a Crimean community there before World War II, and they had a beautiful synagogue there, but the synagogue was like stolen by the Soviets and turned into like a house of actors, like some culture house, and the doors always locked. I couldn't get in, so I was in Ukraine, I couldn't enter. I was disappointed, but I mean, I don't know, I took some selfies, got a video there.
I'm going to stop you because my arm is hurting.
You guys,
to help support me, if you guys could go down and click on the Patreon link and just donate $1 a month, only $1, I'd be able to get to further places, be able to rent a car, to get to villages and areas of both Israel and Palestine that I'm normally not able to get to with public transportation. $1 a month would help me get to so many incredible places.